Hello, and welcome to this lesson, which will provide you with an overview of vendor due diligence. After you have finished this lesson, you will be able to, firstly, understand what vendor due diligence is and why it is important, and secondly, understand the 5 core elements that constitute a typical vendor due diligence document. Vendor due diligence is an in-depth report of an organization that is being sold. It is intended to provide both buyers and sellers with an independent reference point of the organization, encompassing its performance and prospects, and preempting any potential risks or concerns. Because it is a seller or vendor-initiated assessment of an asset taken from the perspective of a potential buyer, it can provide sellers with greater control over the sale process and the timing of a sale. This can, in turn, help secure a higher price for the asset. Vendor due diligence takes place early in the transaction process, and from a content perspective, it typically covers an overview of the business, the market, competitive landscape, business plan, and its prospects. Vendor due diligence projects typically have 2 objectives. Firstly, to prepare a concrete sales pitch for the seller. This entails compiling a sales document to market the asset to future investors, which helps to sharpen the arguments for the sales pitch. This also helps to provide ready-prepared information for the due diligence conducted by potential investors. And secondly, such projects help to dress the bride, which means preparing the organization for sale. This means understanding what needs to be done before the asset can be sold, such as getting major problems under control, developing concrete initiatives to address opportunities, or improving the business plan and the strategic positioning of the organization. It is important that during vendor due diligence, the sales pitch is tailored to different buyer audiences. For example, private equity firms will have specific needs around the investment case, whereas a strategic investor, like a close competitor, will have specific needs about synergies and the attractiveness of certain competitive advantages. All buyer audiences should be interested in industry and competitive dynamics. Private equity firms will take a close look at the current management team and will openly question potential exit strategies. During the transaction process, a variety of documents will be based on or influenced by the vendor due diligence insights. The teaser 2-page document is issued to the list of prospective buyers, giving a general outline of the opportunity. The serious buyers will sign a non-disclosure agreement and then receive more detailed information memorandums and management presentations, providing a basis for initial bids. Meanwhile, the advisors will have prepared a data room, which is normally online, and can hold vendor due diligence insights. Access to this data room is normally only granted in the second round, when just a few serious buyers remain. This is normally when commercial due diligence takes place, where buyers can investigate the target more closely before submitting final bids. Now let's turn your attention to the 5 core elements that constitute a typical vendor due diligence document. These are the executive summary, the company description, the market attractiveness, the competitive situation, and finally, the business plan. You will now review each of these elements in more detail. The executive summary should highlight the results of the vendor due diligence. This should create the story or central arguments for the investment case, and as such, it can involve many changes and iterations with key stakeholders before any materials are finalized and issued to potential buyers. The second core element of the document is the company description. Here, the objective is to introduce the company or organization and to educate the buyer on its finances, strategy and business model, which is how the organization generates its income. The information will normally be compiled from internal documentation and management interviews. The third core element of the document describes the potential of the asset's target market. Here, the objectives are to educate the buyer on the market and its trends. This is done by clearly defining the market, segmenting it, and highlighting its key characteristics, size, and forecast potential. Forecasts will invariably be challenged by potential buyers. Therefore, always state the key drivers and assumptions up front to help you defend your rationale. The fourth core element of the document describes the competitive situation of the asset and how it is performing relative to its peers. Here you should articulate the dynamics of the competitive landscape, including the key competitors, market shares, strategic positioning, and geographic scope. In this section, you can also outline the main competitor business models and key factors of success, and end by describing the seller's sources of sustainable competitive advantage relative to peers. The final element of the vendor due diligence document outlines the asset's business plan. The objective here is to validate the business plan by providing an independent opinion on the underlying assumptions. This should place confidence in the asset's valuation. You should seek to anticipate the key questions an interested buyer might raise in a commercial due diligence, such as why there are peaks or troughs in forecasts, or any sharp growths or declines. This is also an opportunity to highlight any opportunities and risks outside the business plan. For example, further investment opportunities and resource requirements. To help you validate any assumptions, consider integrating an external perspective, such as benchmarks from other projects or industry forecasts from independent research companies. In summary, the key objective of vendor due diligence is to provide a sales pitch to potential investors. But do remember to tailor your sales pitch to the specific needs and interests of specific buyers. As it is a seller-initiated document, keep their intentions front of mind and iterate if necessary after receiving feedback from the CEO or owners to ensure your arguments are robust. The main output should be a document with 5 parts: an executive summary, company description, market attractiveness, competitive situation, and business plan. Always document your assumptions in case you are challenged on your rationale. Thank you for participating, and see you next time on another exciting business training lesson from Pontema.